by Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. So somebody put these charts up again. It will be helpful. These two should be
Where are you?
on the whiteboard. Here, extra bit of tape. But beforehand, if you have any questions on any subject.
Who was Yishmael's father?
One,
Who was Yishmael's father?
Avraham Avinu. Our father.
Right, okay. At what age was he cast into the desert?
The general impression is that
I need to stand, okay.
that some say he was age 17.
At what age?
Some say he was age 17.
17.
And
So,
that's why the expressions used in the Chumash
okay.
are surprising.
So,
Yes.
until
But
the
the
age of
simple pshat is he must have been younger. Probably even, it's because it's called a na'ar, and the na'ar generally means the beginning of adolescence, round about the age of bar mitzvah is na'ar. Yeled, it's generally used for somebody who's aged under 7. Somebody's called a yeled, somebody's a na'ar. So 17 is a bit, if you work out the chronology, it would appear to be 17. But perhaps it's a reference to his behavior. In other words, na'ar would fit quite well to a person of 17 when his own ego begins to bring him into the turmoil of the beginning of adolescence. And with some people, here in Hebrew, they're called tipeshes. You know what the tipeshes is? The person's age 16, and that's the age at which, generally speaking, the average age, when it's a bit of a rebellion which takes place inside everybody, because he begins to feel his own ego rather than being dependent upon parents. So he wakes up, as it were, to his own specific identity, and some people say, well, I've got my own identity, but I'm still getting advice from my parents. But I am taking the advice. My parents have to recognize this in all children. To give them the opportunity, they have to make their choice. Therefore, you've got to treat them differently to the way you treat little children. So the obedience begins to take a back place in the mind of the growing adolescent, who becomes aware of his own specific personality. And with many of them, it becomes a rebellion. So, see, when he was driven away, he was, after all, he was playing games. And the games indicated that he wanted to take over the leadership of the family, as it were. He was the firstborn and so on. But he played it even like a little child plays games, you know. So he started using his skill of archery in different directions, aiming also near Yitzchak. And he also, it says, he played with grasshoppers to bring them up to an idol, to offer them as an offering, to burn them up. Okay. Yes, any other questions?
what I meant is, if he was brought up for 17...
Sister Gordon Kola Lashon, could you say your question loud and clear and slow?
Okay. If you say he was brought up into the desert at the age of 17, he lived 17 years in the house of Abraham and Sarah. Okay, so for 17 years, he must have assumed some positive attributes of mercy or kindness, whatever you call it. What do we assume he was as a person at the age of 17? What did he learn? What did he do? What did he believe in?
If he was 17 when this happened, and it would appear from the account, why did he come to the age of 17? Because the time when he had the Brit Milah was the time when Yitzchok was born, and it was before Yitzchok was born, and he was Bar Mitzvah.
Okay.
He had his Brit Milah Bar Mitzvah beforehand. So that was part of the concept that you've got to dedicate your life to Hashem. And that entered into the awareness of Yishmael. And the sages say it's also shown by the rise of the rise of Islam. And how did Islam arise? It arose amongst those people, both not just in the mind of Muhammad, but also it became accepted by his followers that you have to believe in one spiritual God. And that remains until today, deep down in the awareness of all of Islam. It's just that they've split themselves up into so many different groups, and there are different interpretations. So in fact, I was very pleased to see today that one of the religious leaders in Jordan, it's also a headline, I haven't read it properly yet,
Yes, I saw.
I cut it out to be able to read it, that he thinks that this whole policy against the people of Israel is wrong. And he's one of the moderates, and the voice of the truth is, even I think King Abdullah is also of that view. And the King of Jordan, I think he recognizes that the distortions of the Mufti of Jerusalem cause a lot of problems. So it appears from certainly his father was similar. And so as I've explained, there are other moderates amongst the Muslims until today who believe in the Noach code for the Muslims. So that's part of the good part which existed in Yishmael. He has the name of God. The second quality, which is described if you read between the lines, and with Midrash, is to search more deeply what lies behind the few words written in the Torah. So if you read more carefully, you see the Midrashim. Primarily there was a great Tanaitic scholar, Rabbi Eliezer, who recorded ancient traditions, which also exist amongst the Muslims to some extent. Maybe there's a description there that even when Abraham had to drive Yitzchak out of the house, he himself was a bit upset by it, but he had to follow it. Because Sarah, in this matter, had great prophetic powers to know what would happen if Yishmael remains in the house. It was even dangerous. But he felt that even when he drove Yishmael away, even as it would appear from the Chumash, he married an Egyptian wife, he had hopes. And there's a description in the chapter of Eliezer, which have ancient traditions, as follows. That he went to visit him, but he felt, even if he's not with him, he needs to keep up the bond with him. And he hoped very much. The first time he visited him, there was the lady of the house, and she didn't want to give him anything. Said, "Who are you?" No. So he gave a message over, you know, that he had to give to one of the servants who were there, that he'd visited, and he was very unhappy, of the way in which he was not really received in the house. Then he came again, didn't give up, came a second time, and then the lady of the house was a different lady, because he had divorced this Egyptian wife and he'd taken a different wife who was willing to follow the principles of hospitality. Hospitality, just as he Lot accepted hospitality, although separated from Abraham, he was the nephew. Similarly also, Ishmael they still have principle of hospitality. You know, you've got to treat a guest, you know, even until today. Even those who would even belong to those movements want to drive all the Jews into the sea, but they'll still follow the principle of hospitality. If somebody comes to your house and needs food and drink, you offer him. Then he was offered and got special coffee and so on. It's well known until today, amongst the Bedouins, most in the Middle East. So these qualities remain. And also, and this I'm going to, if you like, if we come to the second shir today, I'm going to deal with this subject from classical sources. When it came to Abraham's funeral, so he was buried in the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. So the Torah emphasizes that the burial was, it says explicitly, by Gruato, Yitzchak Ishmael. It says Yitzchak first, Ishmael, so the sages say, Ishmael, he did teshuvah, he came back to the right path, and he recognized that the true progenitor of the spiritual legacy of Avraham Avinu was Yitzchak. He accepted it. I mean, in between was the Akedah. But the Akedah also, Ishmael, by the Akedah, it's also one of the points where you see Avraham kept connection. At the Akedah, Yitzchak was aged 37. And Ishmael was 13 years older than him.
Right.
Yeah. And who accompanied Avraham to the Akedah? Elazar and Ishmael. He brought Ishmael, because Avraham Avinu, he knows going to, he considered constantly Ishmael to be his son. And he recognized, I mean, what was the idea behind this? It's similar to the attitude of Yitzchak to Esav and Yaakov, the similarity. In other words, if you look, it goes even further back, if you look at the first vision shown to Avraham Avinu, the Brit Ben Abatarim, where it was shown prophetically that his descendants would have to go to the school of suffering to reach the higher level. But the people who to be descended from Avraham Avinu must not be self-centered individuals. And therefore, prophetically it was said, you know, if you're given constant blessing, like Avraham Avinu also went through many tests, till Hashem said, no, you're going to bless everybody. After he'd been through difficulties, he went through further difficulties. And then he was shown that your descendants are going to be given this land from which the ultimate plan of Hashem, that mankind should live on a high level without war, without destruction, would be achieved. So, he said, it'll have to go through suffering. He even describes there, you know, the suffering of Egypt. In certain terms, doesn't mention the land of Egypt, but said descendants are going to be in a land which is not theirs, they're put to suffering. It says there, in fact, Lashon, the expression of enslavement and torture you have to go through. and ultimately inherit this land. And then it says, on that day, Hashem made a covenant of Abraham, to your seed will I give the whole of the Middle East. So the sages say, but why the whole of the Middle East? Why from some say the Nile to the Euphrates, which is basically the basic Middle East? But that didn't happen. Even the time of King Solomon, didn't actually happen. I mean, Solomon made good relationships with Egypt, and also in his time with Assyria. We had good relationships, but it wasn't his land. So they say it's the seed of Abraham, including Ishmael, and at that time even the descendants of Esau, before they moved further into Europe. But this is the vision. So Ishmael could have become part of the covenant and all its descendants. And that's what Abraham hoped. But then when Ishmael went in the wrong direction, recognized by his wild instincts that got the better of him, which Sarah saw, she saw it more easily, because obviously through Hagar, and also Hagar encouraged Ishmael, as it were, to become the real one who was going to take over, the firstborn. So she's loyed out. She was afraid, but it's not. She saw his character is not right. Hashem told her, you can't keep him in the house. Avraham even hoped for him non-stop. Therefore, even when he was driven out, he asked him, please accompany me with this difficult test which I have to go through. See, when Hashem said to him, Kachna et binchet yechidecha, take your son and offer him up, he thought, well, I've got to do this. I'm not going now into especially Akedah, but still the sages say, in his mind was the thought, maybe he wants me to offer Ishmael. He's also my son. That's in Yechidecha, you might say, he was my first only son. Really, he was my only son at the beginning. So I specified Yitzchak. So you see, in the Akedah, he accompanied him. Elazar was, as it were, like one who followed Avraham Avinu in everything. Eved Avraham Anochi, regarded himself entirely as a servant who had learned so much from Avraham Avinu, even to the extent that he hoped, go into next week's parasha, if you want to understand it. He had a daughter who was raised by Avraham and Sarah, and who followed their path completely. So he thought, surely she's the best wife for Yitzchak. Where will Yitzchak find a wife that has the same background? So you see in the household that no, so that explains a bit what you're going to read in next week's parsha. So you see all these elements demonstrate. Then when it came to the Brit Milah, also the blessing was given to Avraham, your seed, but which seed? The seed that comes from Yitzchak, excluding Ishmael. And then it doesn't mention from the Nile to the Euphrates. Then it mentions the land of Canaan, what we will call today Israel with a bit of Transjordan, which is afterwards taken by Moshe Rabbeinu. But that's just the land's really on the border, extra border of Transjordan, but not further, not to the Euphrates, because it was became more limited. And the rest goes also to the seed of Avraham, to whom to Ishmael. So the Muslims, as it were, yes, they were given over the wider Middle East. In Israel were given the narrow section, which was taken over by Moshe Rabbeinu at the beginning, Sichon and Og, and then by Yeshua. Then it became part of the empire of Shlomo HaMelech. So this is You see, we have to work today together with those interpreters. And I'll tell you, I did see there's one of the biggest experts on Islam today, is Dr. Mordechai Keda. And I read an interview which he had with someone, what he thinks of the present situation. He says, if you get together the religious leaders of Islam, who are moderates, together with the rabbis, it will change the situation. Because the rabbis will say, all of them, no Jew may go onto the Temple Mount. And they will say, well, what about the mosque? They'll say our attitude, according to all nearly all, they're just about one or two fringe elements, but it's a consensus of overall rabbinic opinion that we should not attempt in any way to build a temple until Mashiach comes. So, and then we'll see, because we think, and that's the Shia going to be this afternoon, according to our traditions, when the Mashiach will come, the Muslim world will join us and recognize the true Mashiach. Because it becomes so clear in their eyes, and they'll say, this is, even all the descriptions of who will be the Mashiach, which also exists in Muslim tradition, they'll see, this is the true one, as described in all the prophets. And they even say the Christians the same. They'll say, some of them might say, well, we thought it was Jesus, or we thought it was Ishmael who would rise from the dead. But no, it's the Ben David, the true Ben David, Mashiach Ben David. And he's the one who's going to come out, and then all the nations of the world will say, this is the source of it. I would call it a high, in contemporary terms, a higher level of evolution of the human species. Namely, that the mind element of the human being has to be in control of the body element. The soul given by Hashem has to be in control of the animal soul which exists in human beings. It's got to give it directions. And Christianity and Islam, the Rambam describes there, if you want to join up, go into it more deeply, in the uncensored versions, describes that Christianity and Islam are pathways to lead all mankind to accept the truth. And the truth will be that just like in the people of Israel we have priests who have special restrictions and also special duties which other tribes don't have, which the Levites don't have, and the Levites have special also rules, and the rest of the nation. In future, that's what the prophets say, that the people of Israel will be like priests to the nations of the world, who will all become true B'nai Noach. They will keep the Noachide code in detail. The Noachide code detail contains, people think it's 7 commandments, and we have 613. Of the 630 commandments, the ones that are applicable to all Jews in all places, nearly all times, come to about 150, 160. And the 7 Noachide laws contain approximately 70 parallel mitzvot, which apply to Jews as well as to non-Jews. So it's like a spreading out of the path to, as it says at the beginning when the Torah was given. What's Hashem say? What is the mission, message of Mountain of Sinai given to the people of Israel? Vatem tiyuli, what's to go on? Mamlechet Kohanim. You be a kingdom of priests. That means all of you be like priests for Goy Kadosh. For that you have to be a holy group, a holy nation. Kili chol haaretz, one interpreted, because I want all mankind to come unto me. Or to bring all mankind to the true God. That says it in one verse, and the prophets say it in hundreds of passages. Okay. Now, yes. Any other questions?
I have a question and a comment. First of all, a comment about what you said about the news article about, I think he's an Inman in Jordan.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to be optimistic, but we also have to be cautious because it's taken out of context. He doesn't necessarily say what you're saying 100%. What he's saying is that you just can't go around killing a Jew for no reason. During wartime, so when they call an intifada, you're allowed to. You're allowed to blow yourself up, you're allowed to do these things. He's not against that.
Well, I haven't read it.
I saw it. So I mean, people are trying to take but it's taken out of context. So people are trying to take the best quote that he's saying about being compassionate to the fellow man, but at the same time he's not totally disavowing violence against Jews.
Yeah, but apparently there are imams.
There are, yes, but not this one
that
that
go further in their moderation.
They're there, but
Certainly-
not so moderate.
Certainly, Palazzi does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's
He's a great-
different. There's
and,
even
from point of view intellect, he's probably far above many of the. Of
there's
the
also one.
imams.
He's the inman of Duke University in America,
Yes.
and he's also like
Yes.
a very,
Can you get me a copy?
yeah. Like maybe you can send it to you through email. That's okay.
Yes, get me a copy.
The other thing I wanted to say is that during the Akedah, what you were just saying, that even during the Akedah, which Ishmael is much older, and also Elazar himself, they're also called Nar during the Akedah. He says to Narav, Shvu lechem po. So even at a much older age, and even some people say that even at this time he's at an older age, and he's also called a Nar. So it's a little bit tricky exactly what they consider Nar. I mean,
No, it could be. One analyzes the use of the word Na'ar, that in addition to the more narrow usage of the word, let's say when you were Na'ar v'zaken, young and old, it's also a general word used for contrast with people who are really old and people who are younger. So when older people speak about younger people, they'll say the Narim, especially if the Narim were, as it were, used as helpers for older people. If you go through the whole Tanakh, Na'ar v'zaken, so there's a contrast between people who are old and people who are young. So this is a relative matter. If you're in the company of people who are aged 150, as there were in those times, or even 120, even 100, you're people who in Nar, even if they are aged 60. In the question of relativity. In the narrow sense, when does a person become a Nar? It becomes a Nar at Bar Mitzvah. It's called a Nar, technically speaking. Yeah. So that's when it starts. When just by himself, he becomes a Nar. But in the eyes of the older people, he remains a Nar until old age. I mean, it's well known in our family also that they used to, in large families, a person gets along, comes to an older age, so he still looks at his children, you're my babies. There's the baby of the family. Can somebody be aged or be a grandfather already? Be aged 60, but it's the baby of the family. But let's say the older generation to be able to live in the 90s, they say, oh, you're my baby. Okay. Well, we can only make a start now on this, and that's all. And we weren't all here at the time when we started this program. I'll just explain to you, you can have a look at the chart here. This is something remarkable. We have great teachers in history of Am Yisrael who deal with not just the externals of the written and oral tradition, but try to come to an understanding of the basic concepts and also basic methods to change our nature. And the Torah is clearly here to teach us, don't do what comes naturally. What comes naturally, the person will not exercise his mind and his conscience. Then, in the course of life, he is liable to become an intelligent animal. Sometimes he loses intelligence when it comes to how to conduct his life. And that's what the Torah was given to us, as the sages say, the tzarev bahen et habriot, in order to purify human beings. So as aids in this purification, we've had some very great geniuses, some that lived a short life. I mean, people know about Arizal, lived a very short life. Also, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, one of the greatest scholars a few hundred years ago, and he wrote great works, and in addition he wrote them in pure Hebrew. What do you mean by pure Hebrew? He used the Tanakh, the language of the Bible, the language of the Rambam, who followed the language of the Bible, and the language of the Mishnah, I should say, he wrote Mishnah, which is also basically pure Hebrew. Even the time when people went on speaking and even studying Aramaic, but the Mishnah always remained in pure Hebrew. So the Rambam also builds upon the Hebrew of the Mishnah, and Moshe Chaim Luzzatto built upon the language of the Rambam and the Mishnah, and developed the Hebrew language to one of its highest levels. And if you study the development of Hebrew language to Ivrit of today, they base themselves a great deal on his writings. He had such a brilliant mind, he was given such a high intelligence, that he wrote poems, and he wrote dramas, and he wrote about the Hebrew language. But his greatest works were to write about the deeper aspects of the written and the oral tradition, to improve character and to improve a knowledge of the truth. And what is truth? How do you divide it in truth and falsehood? And the most popular book that he wrote is called The Path of the Just, which is the standard work for each chapter to reach a level from the lowest level. In fact, he based it upon the text in the Gemara, which is based on the Chumash, which speaks about what happens when people are in war, when you have to fight physical battle, which is a demoralizing situation, because life becomes cheap, and moral principles become cheap, and are often abused because it's too difficult, because it's life and death. So it says, when you have to fight a battle, let's speak about today, battle of defense, which is permissible today according to Torah. It says in the Chumash, V'nishmata mikol davara. You've got to work hard to preserve yourself from everything evil. Here you're involved with enemies who are murderous, and they want to kill you, as some of us are today. So the rule is, the Torah does not say, just give up your life. No, if you're in a situation that you are completely helpless, you just have to pray to Hashem. You've got no weapons, you're weak, and a strong murderer comes up, wants to kill you, just appeal to him, have compassion. It doesn't work, so you're an unfortunate victim. You must pray to Hashem, may good help. But the Torah says, no, don't do that. Don't feel helpless. You've got to try your best. he who comes to kill you. You've got to try to struggle. You shouldn't do it, whichever way you can do it. If you can wound him, fine. If that will stop him being able to kill you. If you can take off his weapons, you have to do it. And look, you must say this off the record. Off the record, I mean, I don't mind being publicized. Why is it off the record? Because I think one has to wait for investigation. There's been no investigation, but all I can say that Simcha, who was a student here, the only explanation I've got for what happened, they want to misunderstand. People thought, the truth is, what he had in his bag, he had a loaf of bread. And I knew him well. It was like, he's come to our house regularly. What he did, I mean, when you were learning in the yeshiva at the beginning, he demonstrated enormous strength. He was very strong. And he helped physically, whilst he was studying here, with anything that needed strength, decorations and repairs. And otherwise he was a dedicated student and joined in the prayers. And then he felt, because he's so strong, that's one of the main reasons he felt, he's got to help to defend Israel. So he joined Nachal Haredi. And there he was known as a very reliable soldier. And then when he came out from there, now he had the ability to become a security officer, and he felt he had to earn money. What was the main? He loved learning, he loved coming to Dublin, but he felt he had to earn money to help his mother come on Aliyah. His parents had no financial possibility. His father was sick, he couldn't even travel, but his mother could come. And that's why he took an apartment outside the yeshiva, to have an apartment where he would stay with his mother. So my interpretation is what happened. He struggled when they started suspecting him coming with weapons, and there were shouts around that he is Chas v'Shalom terrorist. No? So he struggled. That's how this tragedy took place. So it's like he followed here the ruler. If you feel you're being attacked, you've got to fight against it. Don't just let them. Well, this was, I think, the situation. So that's the din. So the Chumash says, when as many, I'm saying this because there are many people, unfortunately, who are being attacked. Today the front line seems to be wherever Jews are. For some of the terrorists. So we have to learn defend ourselves. So the Chumash says, when you're involved in that situation, don't become demoralized. Don't regard, you still got to preserve life as much as possible, and keep away from everything evil. Don't let the evil instinct, the materialism, the egoism take hold of you. And that's very difficult. So on this comes one of the saints, written in the Talmud, Pinchas ben Yair, and he says, from here we learn out, Torah brings you to Zehirot. Torah brings you to take care at all times. Just give me at the start of it, gives different steps, the path of the just. Even in such situations, you've got to remain a just person. The Torah tells you, be careful. Avoid dangers, avoid demoralization, avoid becoming a victim to lower passions, whether it be hate or jealousy. Now why Pinchas ben Yair is known in the Talmud for his great saintliness? He was one of amongst the Tanaitic great scholars, he was known to be so saintly that his saintliness spread even to his animals. There are many episodes. It spread around because he was a very saintly man. So why is he tied to this verse? The steps, the Torah brings to carefulness. That brings us a reason to be enthusiastic, not waste time, but waste energy, use it for good things. And so on, each step from Mesilat Yesharim with this path, until you can even reach Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, I suppose, by Pinzariya, it means to feel that you're connected with the spiritual power of the world, which is Hashem, that emanates from all aspects of life. Because all life comes from Hashem, all thoughts come from Hashem. You can even reach Ruach HaKodesh on the lower level, not on the level of Shlomo HaMelech, the others, but on high levels reached by the early great saints. So this Mesilat Yesharim, it teaches us every person's life is a struggle. It's a comparison. If you're living apparently in a peaceful environment where there are no problems, don't think that there isn't a battle. There's a battle going on all the time. If you take it too easy, then sometimes the animalistic instinct to take over. So therefore, every person has his, it's in Yiddish, jeder hat sein Päckl. Every person's got the load to carry, and he's got to face his challenges, the same sensitive challenges. And some person think, I've got no challenge. Maybe you're just, as it were, beginning to vegetate. You know, you're not facing the real challenges that you should be facing to grow. So this is the Mesilat Yesharim, which has been printed in, I think, probably thousands of different editions by now, and has brought many people. You can call it like, 12, these days there are 12-step programs. But you've got a program of steps to become, even if you're faced in such a position as actual warfare, or in the problems that you're facing look to you like constant warfare, constant struggles, but you can overcome them. They're sent by Hashem for you to constantly grow and grow. That's the Mesilat Yesharim. But what we're going to study now is something not so well known, which however has been produced in a fantastic fashion by Rabbi Sexton. Also gone to the text, short works of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto that teach us, I would say, first of all, the intellectual challenge of growing with our mind when we learn the oral tradition, especially the Gemara, and at the same time to connect it with thought which is connected with intellectual and moral truth. Human beings, in fact, I've seen some modern psychologists, they say, which is the strongest motivation in human behavior. So we know there's been the libido, some Freudian concepts, which is really the pleasure instinct. Some say the ego instinct, that's more the Adlerian psychology. Some say, Viktor Frankl, we go into deeply, he says it's the desire for meaning, understanding. And Professor Baruch, also basing himself mainly on Jewish sources, he came around the idea that the moral instinct, purification to reach a high moral level. But the many psychologists, they say, the main motivation is curiosity, to find out the truth about things. This curiosity leads us to find out external truth. And that is really the subject of this matter, how the search for truth which pervades the methods of discussion brought in the oral tradition, leads us to purify the search for truth, and allow the search for truth to influence behavior. So that's what we'll discuss. It goes back to, if you want to the concept of the Rambam, who asked the question, Adam and Eve, they were not supposed to eat from the fruit, the tree, which produces the knowledge of the difference between good and evil.
Right.
So that means they didn't know the difference between good and evil beforehand. Famous question, the guide for the perplexed. So what choice did they have beforehand? If they had no choice, but they didn't know, they had no moral instincts. They didn't know what was the difference in good and evil. So how could they sin? How can you blame them if they didn't know what it meant? They had no conscience, it appears. If they had no conscience, how can you give them commandments? And how can you punish them for eating from the tree? So the answer he gives is, beforehand, they did know the difference between truth and falsehood. That they knew. They knew to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil was a transgression of their choice between truth and falsehood. So to identify highest level of truth, also in moral matters, that's that which if you have that high knowledge of truth, it gives you the ability to develop the highest level of conscience. That's really why he calls these three little booklets that go together, he calls it the Path of Holiness. So so we need this. Just this an introduction. You just have a quick look at this. The way of Torah. He really calls it the three books are the ways of reason, the book of knowledge, and the book of words, which together he calls it really the Derech HaKodesh, the path towards holiness. So that's what we do next year. And if any of you want to have more, go into this question of of the place of Ishmael, the coming of the Mashiach, that I'll leave at 12 o'clock from the Rambam.